Well, electricity rates have gone up the past few years, and electricity companies are getting smarter and smarter to get more money out of you every single month. And today on this episode, we're going to be talking about how they can make more money off of you, not by the kilowatt hour, but by the kilowatt. And what I mean by that is a demand charge. Now, today we're going to be talking about what is a demand charge, how they bill for that, and how maybe you can do something to fight back and save yourself some money on your electricity bill. So let's dive in with the help of a whiteboard and talk about demand charges in residential. All right, everybody, welcome back. So Paul here with another episode of Tech Motoring, and this one is specifically about demand charges. What are they? How do you get billed for them? How does the electricity company calculate this? And how does this affect your electricity bill every single day? And so today we're going to give you a scenario of my particular situation here in South Carolina. Now, just to kind of give you an idea, we just recently, as of early this year, April of 2025, have had our electricity rates changed. Now, prior to this, we've had a 10-cent per kilowatt hour rate during the off season, which is usually like fall, winter, and a little bit of the early spring. And then during the on-peak season, which is the summertime and some of the spring, we used to pay 12 cents per kilowatt hour. Pretty good rates, pretty cheap to begin with, so I'm not really complaining about that. However, about 5 years ago, we did put solar on our roof to kind of help lower our costs even more. Now, if you're wondering why we were going to lower the cost of our 10 cents and 12 cents per kilowatt hour, well, it's because I knew something like this was going to happen, which is a change in our rates, our electricity rates through our Santee Cooper Electricity Company. And so with that, we kind of took on solar, we adopted solar, put that on our roof, and then about 2 years ago, we actually put in Tesla Powerwalls because I knew we were going to have some big changes in our electricity bill that were going to affect our bill every single month. And I've had a lot of conversations with family, with friends, and with a lot of people who are confused about the new rates and what they are and how they work. And so today we're going to kind of show you a scenario here over the course of a month, how much we pay and roughly how much you'll get charged with a demand charge based on how much you pull during a specific time of the day. And just keep in mind that this is not for everybody. This video may not necessarily be for your electricity company. So this is really just a PSA for everybody out there. If you're watching this, go and look at your electricity company's bill, understand it, figure out where they're getting their numbers from, figure out how they're charging you, and look at the rates that you're paying. If you're paying on-peak, off-peak, how could you better yourself with those on-peak demand hours or just on-peak hours? And what can you do to figure out a cheaper rate for you? Because keep in mind, electricity companies don't always have one plan. Sometimes they have multiple plans. In fact, our electricity company probably has about 3 or 4 plans for residential that you can utilize based on your usage and needs. So for instance, they actually do have a plan specifically towards electric vehicle owners. As you may know, I have 3 electric vehicles. I'm not on that plan. And the reason for that is because I prefer to charge my vehicles throughout the day, not necessarily overnight, which is what they want you to do on that plan. But we've also have other things in place to help us offset the costs, which is our solar and our Tesla Powerwalls. And they have come into so much more help this past about 6, 7, 8 months now that we've been on this new plan. And we've been saving a lot of money. And I've been hearing a lot of people who live in this area who are greatly affected by these changes. And I think a lot of people don't quite understand how a demand charge works. And so that's why I want to dive in today and talk about that so you can kind of get an idea of what you can be affected by. And if you're currently not paying a demand charge, don't be surprised in the next 5 years or so that your electricity company adopts this, because this is a very confusing way to charge people. And I think that's how they kind of get away with it. And I'm not saying that this is some sort of conspiracy here, but what I'm saying is if you find a way to charge people and they don't understand how they're being charged, most people are not going to necessarily say anything or do anything. And so they're going to get away with it. And so understanding what you're paying for is the first thing you can do to fight this and try to save yourself some money from your electricity company. So if you have any questions about whether or not, why am I paying so much money for my electricity every month? I feel like it should be lower. The math doesn't add up. Take a look at your rates, take a look at your bill, and try to see if you can make sense of it. But for now, let's talk about demand charges in residential and how they can affect you. Here we have a whiteboard that I've set up in a calendar way here. So shout out to Jason on YouTube for making whiteboards a really cool thing. But as you could see here, we have pretty straightforward thing here, right? So I'm doing this over the month of October, which is what we're currently in right now. So October of 2025, right now we have an on-demand window, or in this case, it would be an on-peak window of 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Now this changes actually going into November all the way up to, I think, March, and then I think in April we switch back to this again. So we actually do change throughout the year, which is another way that it can be confusing for people who live in a house. They might forget, oh, it's November 1st, we have to switch back, but if you forget for one day, it's going to cost you, and I'm going to explain that here in a second. So you can see we have a 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. peak. In the middle of the summertime, obviously that's when it's the hottest part of the day. People are getting home from work. They want to start cooking dinner. You're most likely going to use more electricity during those 3 hours. So the question is, what can you do to prevent yourself from using too much electricity during those hours? And how could you learn how to shave off some excess usage? So October, 3 to 6 p.m. This is our month of October here, all 31 days. And let's say that you're pretty knowledgeable as to how your electricity works. You understand your 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. window, so you're going to try to minimize your usage. So just to kind of give you an idea, right now we pay just about 8 cents per kilowatt hour. They actually lowered our kilowatt hour rate going to this new plan. So a lot of people were probably like, oh, that's great. We have a cheaper rate now. So we're going to be paying less for our electricity. But that's why the demand thing is so important. And we pay actually just under 8 cents. I think it's like 0.07922, something ridiculous like that. But we pay about 8 cents per kilowatt hour. So that is the number that a lot of people get stuck on. 3 to 6 p.m. is our demand charge. Now let's say that you are really knowledgeable and you say, I know between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. that I am going to use as little electricity as possible. I'll wait to turn the oven on until 6 o'clock. I'll eat dinner a little later. I won't run the air conditioning as low because that'll save some money, right? I won't plug my electric vehicle in. I'll set the timer to, let's say start charging at 6 p.m. instead of 5 p.m. when I get home from work. So you're doing pretty good, right? So on day 1 of October, you're like, I'm only going to pull about 2 kilowatts because I'm being really conservative until after 6 p.m. And you kind of do this throughout the entire month. The second, you pulled only 1 kilowatt peak during that time. The third, 1 kilowatt. The fourth, 2 kilowatts. And you go through the entire month saying, hey, I'm going to be just doing that 1 to 2 kilowatts every single day. So my demand charge will actually be pretty cheap. In fact, if you want to know exactly how much, over here you can see we have our demand charge, which is $8 per kilowatt. So keep in mind that we're not talking about kilowatt hour here. We're actually talking about kilowatt. And so that's the amount of energy you use at a given time multiplied by a factor of a dollar amount. In this case, it is $8. So in this month of October, you pulled a maximum of 2 kilowatt, right? So with 2 kilowatt, that means you should only have about a $16, excuse my really terrible writing there, $16 demand charge, because 2 times 8 is 16, right? So you only pulled 2 kilowatts, you're doing really good, right? You figure your electricity bill will be the best in the whole neighborhood because you understand it and you did the right thing all month. So let's talk about the last day here, which is October 31st, right? It's Halloween, you're at work, you're trying to finish up the day, your kids are calling you, they're saying, hey, you gotta get home. We wanna get out there, all the good candy's gonna be gone. I need to get my costume on. Oh, well, now you got to get home. You got to get that SpongeBob costume on that you had for 5 years in a row. You don't even know how it smells at this point because you haven't even taken it out of the box. So you got to get home. You got to get your kids dressed up. You got to get out. So you leave work early. You're jumping home and you get home a little bit earlier than you're normally used to. And then you just, out of sheer habit, you just plug your electric car in because you got to charge it up. You're at 10%. I need to charge this up so I could get to work tomorrow. I got to get the kids ready for Halloween. So you plug the car in, not realizing that it's 5 p.m. You're within the demand window and you pull 10 kilowatts out of your electricity grid. You didn't realize it. You went all month thinking that you did the perfect thing. You plugged your car in at 5 o'clock and now you just pulled 10 kilowatts from the grid. And of course you didn't notice this until you got back from your trick-or-treating with your kids because you went from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. pulling 10 kilowatts. Well, guess what? That means your demand charge now just went from $16 a month to $80 a month, all because you slipped, all because you made an honest mistake. And that's how demand charges work. And this is how demand charges get the better of everybody because all it takes is one day to slip and you're now paying for a demand charge for the entire month. And you made it through the entire month perfectly fine, all the way up to that last day, and you made a mistake. And that is how electricity companies are able to get you on a demand charge. A lot of people that I know I talk to are always really good about, oh, well, I keep my electricity rates good between 3 and 6 most days. It's perfectly fine. But remember, this affects you 7 days a week, or at least it does in our case. So 7 days a week of having this demand is really hard because even on the weekends when you're home, you got a lot more people at home, you're using more electricity, you're going to use more demand. And so it doesn't matter what you do Monday through Friday. If Sunday is the big day where you do everything between 3 and 6 p.m., that one day a week will hurt you for the entire month. And so this is just a simple kind of example of how demand charges work, or at least specifically in our case. But like I said, educate yourself on what your electricity company does and educate yourself on how it takes this to go from one day to charge you an extra $80 on that electricity bill, because that could be doubling your electricity bill depending on your situation, depending on, where you live. There are other factors involved in this. So let's say you plugged that car in, but you thought about it 30 minutes later. If you unplugged it, well, you would really get charged for about half of that. So it would actually be like a $40 demand charge for the month, not $80. So the thing is, it's based off of a 60-minute window. And I can show you the formula for this. The formula is ridiculous, and this is why they make it so confusing for people to calculate. It's no longer kilowatt hours multiplied by the amount you pay per kilowatt hour. There's now this entire formula that is used to calculate on-demand charges. And so it gets so confusing and so difficult for people to understand how this works that most people don't even try. Anyway, I hope this video kind of helps you out. I know it could be still a little confusing after this explanation, but just keep in mind that what it comes down to is if you're paying a demand charge, it doesn't matter when during the month it happens, you're going to get charged for the entire month. Now, the other thing you can do is keep in mind that you could theoretically take advantage of this by knowing how much demand you use. Like, let's say you're used to plugging in your car every day at 4 p.m. and you're okay with paying a demand charge, right? Well, that means you could do it every single day because you won't exceed the demand charge any more than you've already have for the month. So if you plugged in on the first of the month and you're okay with paying an extra $80 a month because of that demand charge, well, that means you could just do it every single day. And it's not going to really change your electricity bill at all because the demand charge has already been met on day one. So in certain situations, for some people, they're not going to really care because they're already going to be used to that number every single month. But for those of you who are a little bit more budget conscious and are looking to lower your electricity bill, I highly recommend looking at your electricity bill, looking at your electricity rates, and seeing if there are other ones that can fit your situation better. Electricity companies do offer multiple plans. Anyway, I hope this video helped you out. If it did, make sure you give it the thumbs up below. Of course, if you're interested in anything that's solar or battery backups for your house, like our Tesla Powerwalls, go ahead and take a look at the description below where I'll have some videos down there for you to look at. Of course, I'll have some here in these little boxes at the end as well. Thank you very much for watching today's episode, and we'll see you all on the next one. And remember, welcome to the future. Welcome to Tech Motoring. We'll see you soon, everybody.